Okay, well, thanks everyone for joining us today for another exciting edition of the Kansas 911 GIS user group for August. I hope everyone's had a nice summer and is not melting from the humidity. At least it's calmed down a little bit this week, but man, it's been a hot and humid summer. But it's nice everything's still green. So, there's trade-offs. Still green and lots of mosquitoes. So there's the trade-off there. We will be following our usual lineup today. I'll start things off. I really just have one slide with a program update. And actually, it'll be Alan and I. I'll talk a little bit, then I'll pass it off to Alan to talk about the critical facilities mapping project. And then we'll hand it off to Will, who will provide a toolbox update, and then followed up with Sherry, who will talk about more of the national things and anything related to NENA, GeoMSAG, and other announcements that we need to be aware of. So for my update, it's really to let you know that, of course, we have the imagery RFP was out and closed, and proposals have been submitted and are now currently under review with the 911 imagery RFP committee. So really not much more I can say besides we're reviewing the proposals, but a few things to make note of, which are, again, we're going for leaf-off imagery to support 911. So the acquisition time window that we've put in, or the time frame we've put in for, that would be, if they can collect the whole state, hopefully that'll happen between February and April of 2027. So that's right around the corner for the acquisition. The RFP also had specifications of 1-foot resolution, but we also asked for pricing to consider 6-inch resolution statewide, which would be really cool. That's all dependent on cost and if there's some additional supporting funding, because of course the 911 board generously supports 1-foot resolution imagery refresh every 3 years. So moving to 6-inch is a possibility, but of course it's more expensive. So I know Sherry's working on some possible partnerships where for some agencies to possibly pitch in to see if we can bump it up to 6-inch, again, depending on the cost. So as sensors and technology get better, it becomes a little more realistic to get a higher resolution statewide product. So still to be determined on that. Just so you let you know the general timeline. So acquisition would be, late winter, early spring of next year. And by the time, and we've all done this a few times, right? So by the time whoever's awarded the contract has time to fly, process, refly if needed, make adjustments, and then process the data into a format that we can start QAing. We will then put out the call for help for QA volunteers again to help us QA that. And it's a huge amount of data. You guys have been great year after year, so we appreciate your support with that. So if you or someone from your jurisdiction could help with the QA, we'll take it. So we'll be sending out the call for volunteers, probably somewhere around late summer, early fall, probably more like early fall of this year when the data is ready to be QA'd. So just want to let you know that's kind of the general calendar for the imagery. So watch for announcements regarding the contract award and more timeline and information as it becomes available. Okay, well, with that, I'm going to hand it off to Alan to provide an update for the Critical Facilities Mapping Grant.
Thanks, Eileen. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to give you a quick couple of slides on where we are now with the Critical Facilities Mapping Grant. This intro here slide is probably pretty familiar to you if you've attended one of our previous quarterly GIS user group meetings. The updated numbers are we're just under 900 K-12 facilities have applied so far, and there's 888 last I checked active projects. So pretty big numbers, but just as a reminder, there's approximately 1,500 schools in the state of Kansas. So there's still some coverage that isn't quite being met. And I have not heard any new word on any potential funding for a third year, but if there is interest, we will ask that you continue to put in applications so we can kind of get a gauge of the continued interest and need for wrapping up the remainder third of the state that hasn't been mapped yet. And also a reminder that all state and local government entities can use the existing contracts from the 3 pre-selected vendors to purchase indoor mapping services. And you can do that through third quarter of 2029. So something to keep in mind if you have other kinds of institutional or governmental facilities you'd like mapped in your community. Next slide.
For some reason, it's not advancing. So I'm sorry. I'm really pressing the button. So let's see here. There we go. Sorry.
There we are. Okay, thanks. So here's some quick stats in case you're wondering where you are, if you think maybe there's been some radio silence or things aren't quite moving as quickly as you'd hoped. There have been 888 approximately approved facilities. And of those, 317, or just over a third of the approved facilities, have been mapped, approved by the facility representative, so typically like a superintendent or a principal or facility director of a school district, and sent to us at DASC for technical approval. So, and of those 317 that have made it through the first 2 hoops, we've reviewed, as of earlier this week, 289 of those 317 facilities. 28 of them, last I checked, probably closer to 20 or 25 now, are still in the approval queue. So if your facility's been mapped and you haven't heard anything from us yet, you might be in that little group of 28. Of that 289, 243 have passed tech reviews so far, and 46 have been reviewed, but have been sent back for a little bit of additional rework. And of that 243 that have passed, 15 of them were initially rejected. So it's kind of interesting here. A little over 60 of the 289 facilities that we've reviewed so far actually didn't pass the first go around. So there have been some comments on the intensity of our review process and the number of participants. But I think this shows that there's value to it, and we're catching things so that hopefully we'll have a accurate, high quality set of maps and set of GIS data available to schools and local PSAPs when we're done with this project. So, and of those 243, 153 have passed final delivery and been signed off by the sponsoring PSAP. So 48% of the submitted facilities and 17% of all of our approved facilities for this project have passed final delivery. So we're making progress. Sometimes there's a lot of data and a lot of facilities to review, and it seems like there's a lot going on, but we are making progress. And just one more reminder, if you are asked by your PSAP director, or you are the PSAP director, or you're going to be involved in the final sign-off approval process, we do have a document on the portal that kind of gives some tips and tricks as to what you might want to be looking for when reviewing your projects. Next slide. And this just kind of reminder, the next steps, we got to go finish finalizing our deliveries. Still working on finalizing integration into Radius and Lightning. So I know I don't have any new news on this front. I don't know if Sherry has learned something since in the last few days. She can feel free to chime in now, but
nope. Last thing I heard was the last thing you heard.
Okay. All right. Well, wait, it's still in progress. We'll put it that way. So, and just some reminder that we want to encourage maintenance, either having a contract or a plan in place or kind of diving into it yourself. But the funding for this grant does not cover continuing maintenance. So that's something to keep in mind as these projects get delivered. So, and Eileen and I are going to be presenting at CAM on the CFM. So I'm hoping that we'll have some lessons learned for you guys by then. So I think it'll be a good presentation. So, and then one last slide. And just another reminder, if if you're curious as to the status of the project, we have a dashboard publicly available. The link's down at the bottom. So you can kind of see we've made a little more progress since this last snapshot. So, and that's all I have. I think ready to hand it off to Will for his part, unless you have any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alan. Lots of good information. Obviously, there's a lot to track with this project, especially since it came in 2 different fiscal years of funding. So yeah, if you have questions, please put those in the chat. And Alan, as you have time, would you mind putting the links to the dashboard and to the document you had in the chat as well?
I can,
That's
yeah.
what that's funny. I beat
Yep.
you there, Jack. Jack just asked the same thing. So we'll get those shared out to you as well.
I can definitely do that.
Yeah. And this dashboard's been great to watch it come along because we keep tweaking it based on, we're like, oh, we realize we need to track this other thing and this new thing. So it's been fun to see, Alan, kind of how this dashboard has evolved through the project. So good. Okay, well, with that, I will advance on and hand it off to Will.
Thanks, Eileen. Not a ton to report this side. We're continuing to work on our migrations from our cloud service or from our on-premise service into the cloud, which has led to the main talking point for this user group meeting. So if you want to go ahead to the next one, Eileen. We had planned a rollout for the last month of the previous quarter. And unfortunately, in part of our migration, we ran into some bugs with ArcGIS Pro and Azure. That was a bit of a hurdle between ourselves and Esri support and our IT team to figure out what was going on and kind of get things resolved. So if you want to go ahead to the next one, Eileen, sorry. The kind of final results of that were that we ended up with an enhancement request and a bug. Essentially, FlexNet between Pro and desktop for setting up the environments in single use doesn't work in Azure before 3.7, but that's not really documented anywhere. And so we went through some issues with some strange errors with premium support, which got escalated to a few levels, which led to some problems with licensing, which we found out with Pro 3.7, which wasn't licensed under our current ELA because it uses a different licensing system than all of the Pro iterations before 3.7, etc. So long story short is we had quite a bit of troubleshooting on our servers between Pro and desktop to try and set up and stabilize that environment so that we're able to continue to run both Pro and desktop workflows as needed to maintain one of our core goals, which is to continue support for those of us who are still using desktop through the end of the year. So what was going to be a rollout into Pro had some stability issues and things in our server. And so we are pretty much stabilized on that now. I believe we're finishing up some testing on those workflows. And the testing related to those workflows had to do with a lot of our process automation. So we're at a point where I think we can move past this. We've shown that it's stable and functioning. So we should be able to hopefully roll out those updates here before the last month of the quarter. So that will be essentially on the same pace as we were on before, just delayed a quarter. And I think at this point we have, fingers crossed, tested most of our workflows and automations and everything else between the two environments now. And we'll have a little bit smoother sailing moving the rest of our migration steps into the cloud. So that is essentially where we are. So Eileen, if you want to go one more for me. Thanks. We're looking at the same steps we had previously talked about. So launch your support officially for Pro Python 3. We'll continue the Python 2 toolbox via GitHub. And from then on, we will be in a Pro environment with legacy support for Python 2 and desktop available on GitHub if you need it. And we would like to maintain that support through at least the end of this year and potentially longer if possible. However, that gets more and more difficult as Pro kind of separates itself from desktop and either replaces functionality or just makes this a functionality is no longer backwards compatible. But when we get to that point, we'll have a discussion about it and make an announcement, etc., kind of as needed, and give you guys as much lead time as we possibly can on the back end to make any transitions you need to make in your PSAP to accommodate that kind of support ending. So that's basically where we're at in the toolbox. We're plugging along here, trying to get things set up and stable as possible so there aren't any impacts to you on the other side. And I think so far we've been able to do that despite a few setbacks with some bugs and feeling out some things in the Azure environment. But that should do it for me. I think if everyone has any questions, feel free to send me an email or ask in chat here. I'm happy to connect with you and discuss anything we need to look at. And I'm always available if you have any questions about data management or data in general. Please feel free to reach out.
Okay, thank you, Will. That was a really nice way to say that was just a complete nightmare. The licensing and the bug issues and stuff. So Will's done a great job working through that and getting us to the next stage on that. So appreciate all your hard work on that, Will. And boy, you don't know what you don't know when you're migrating to a new environment and licensing gets a little more clamped down. So appreciate all your work on that. Okay, let's see here. Oh, that's the end of it. So there's the link to Will's story map, the toolbox story map, which is great to provide any updates. So anytime there's a release or pertinent information or things that you need to know, the story map will be updated to reflect that. So thanks for doing that, Will. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, so I think we'll hand it off to Sherry Massey.
All right, I have just a couple of things other than I can see I have an image on the slide that didn't move right. But anyway, we have a couple of open 911 board positions. I brought this up last time, but we have 2 positions for members representing information technology personnel from government units. GIS people qualify. This is not something you apply for with us. It is something that you apply for with the governor's appointments office. But if you are interested, those positions are open. And I know that the appointments group is actively seeking applicants because they are voting positions on our board. And for those of you who aren't familiar with kind of the board structure, we have 19 voting positions. And then we have an additional 8, I hope I don't get in trouble by forgetting one, non-voting positions. And the obligation is to attend quarterly board meetings and weigh in, basically giving the local, if possible, information technology perspective on some of the stuff that we do and some of the discussions that the board has. Our normal training, the data maintainer training, will be pre-conference again at CAM. And looking forward to that. CAM is in Wichita this year. And so we will hope to see you guys there. And just as a reminder, if you need PSP database access, which is where you would see the MSAG records that your GIS data turned into, you can always get with us and we can request a user ID. And though we have had a whole lot going on, there is not much else to talk about from a GIS perspective, at least on my end. So, oh, you have CAM conference information, Eileen.
Yeah, sorry, I was thinking you had another slide. So I just went ahead and zipped ahead.
Nope.
Great. any questions for Sherry before we just give everyone a reminder and kind of the update on CAM? I don't see anything in the chat. So just as Sherry had just mentioned, the CAM conference is October 6th through 9th in Wichita. The GIS data maintainer will be a pre-conference class. That'll once again be kind of a tag team of everyone who's actually facilitating and presenting on this call. It's kind of nice that we're all kind of focusing on our areas of expertise to kind of give you the updates on that. So if you haven't been in a while or have any questions or anything, please come to the class because we love to see you. You do not have to register or pay for CAM to go to the pre-conference class, which is extremely generous of CAM to continue to allow us space for that year after year. So with that, I would encourage you to also come to CAM because at the conference, we're going to do, Alan and I are going to do a presentation, a more expanded presentation on the critical facilities mapping project. So we'll include, like he said, a little more lessons learned and maybe some snapshots or any of the latest information we have on the project at that point, a little more into the QA and different things like that. And we also have a session for this user group. And with that, usually we do kind of brief updates as well, but I would invite you all, if you have any topic you'd like to discuss or questions or concerns or just, hey, what's this do or how's that work or whatever, I would encourage you to send any of those questions or concerns to me. And then I'd love to incorporate those into the user group session because if you have the question, I'm sure somebody else does. And we want to make sure we're getting everything, all the information communicated out to you. So either send them to me ahead of time or just come to the session and ask the questions. So we're excited, hopefully see all of you there in Wichita in just a month or so-ish now. So just around the corner. Boy, it's almost September at this point. So let's see. With that, I think our final slide is just a reminder about the training we just talked about, as well as the GIS data steward for the PSAP that is available through the the 911 board's learning platform. So if you ever have familiar with a new member of your PSAP that is identified as the data steward and they need access to learning, they should be able to reach out to their liaison for that. But feel free to loop us in if you're having trouble connecting the dots for them to get to that training. We continue to update GIS-related 911 information on the Desk Hub. So if you go to the Desk Hub and look down or scroll down to the initiatives, there's the 911 section. So look for, hopefully we have it there, but if we don't, we'd like to know that as well. If there's something you're looking for you can't find, let us know and we'll direct you to that spot or add it to that location. The 911 board has a nice new website, so check that out if you haven't. And then, of course, the 911 board portal where you all submit your data through is had a new year on April, which you all should have been redirected to, so it really shouldn't have impacted you at all. But data submissions, there's really not anything that has changed in that process where you go and sign in, submit your data, validate it, get notifications, and move on from there. So not much changing there. So with that is all I have for today. I think the group as well. So I don't see any questions in the chat. So we'll kind of open it up right now. If anyone wants to come off mute, if you have any questions or comments, we'd love to hear from you before we wrap up today. No? Okay. All right, well, we're always available, so contact us if you think of something later or have a question. Again, I hope to see you all at CAM, and I will be posting this recording and the slides on the Desk Hub afterwards. So if you wanted to share this with someone that wasn't on the meeting or wanted to refer back to it, it'll be available. Probably usually takes a few days by the time the recording is available and I get it posted, but pretty soon then. So, okay, well, thank you everyone for attending, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.